A computer consists of 5 important parts, and the first part is actually the input devices part. In this part we have all the input devices which will help the computer work, and this will be giving input to the processor to be processed. The other part is the processor itself. A processor is the central brain of a computer where all the calculations and control units are being carried. So it is actually divided into 2 parts, the ALU, arithmetic and logic unit, and the control unit. But again, it also consists of the parts where all the manipulations, all the calculations, and all the controls are being done in this particular processor. The other part is the storage device part, of which all the storage devices that we have connected to your computer would be this part. In this storage part, we have many types, as we explained. Then again, whenever the processor is working, it will be working in line with the memory. In this case, when we speak of the memory, we actually refer to RAM. So when the processor is working on certain instructions, these instructions will be stored in memory, and this memory is RAM. Now, whenever a processor wants to access information from the RAM, it will actually fetch that information from the RAM and work on it. And whenever we want to access information from the hard disk, that information will actually be stored in the RAM temporarily, and then at the end of the day, the processor will fetch that information from the RAM and work upon that particular information. And at the end, we have the output device, of which the processed data from the processor will be either displayed as an output or will be connected to some other devices to be given as a printout or a hard copy. Now, this block diagram therefore shows all the important parts of a computer, which are actually the input devices, the processor, the main memory or RAM, the storage devices, and then the output devices. What you see on this block diagram here will actually depict what you see here on the table, showing all the components arranged here. Now, I'm going to start explaining about one component, one part of the computer after the other, and explain what are the different types of devices found in this particular part, and what actually they do as far as the computer working is concerned. The first part of any computer system is the input part. The input part consists of many devices which are used to input data into your computer system to be worked on. Now, the commonly used input devices include the keyboard. This is the keyboard connected to a USB device, of which if I want to connect this keyboard into the computer, I have to use this USB cable and be able to connect it on this computer. So in this case, this keyboard is connected to this computer. But again, the other device, input device, as far as the computer is concerned, is the mouse. The mouse is also another input device, which is actually used to allow movement from one point to another using a cursor or a pointer. Now, this mouse is also connected using a USB port or USB device at the end, which also be used to connect at this particular point of the USB device. Now, the mouse and keyboard are connected, and that's why you see mouse blinking. Before the mouse is connected, there is no power that comes into the mouse, but when I connect the mouse onto the keyboard, onto the computer, it will display the laser light that will indicate that the mouse is now working. Now, other input devices include things like the microphone. Suppose I want to make a call to someone or listen to music or watch a movie, and then you want to use the microphone to hear or to make a call. What I do is I connect my headset and then use the microphone part to be able to communicate. And therefore, this device, this port, that is the speaker port, is connected to a port on a speaker, and then the microphone port is connected on the microphone jack port on the computer. Then thereafter, I'm able to connect and then wear my headset and be able to use my headset as my microphone. When I want to talk, this microphone will actually be working. From the block diagram, the second part of the block diagram is the processor. As we said, a processor is the central brain of a computer, which makes the computer perform its functions. Now, the processor is actually divided into 2 parts, the arithmetic and logic unit and the control unit, of which the arithmetic and logic unit is actually the part of the processor that is used to make calculations and logic calculations. Now, the control unit is the part of the processor which does all other activities not associated with the mathematics or logics. And therefore, this is actually what you call the processor, and the processor will be having 2 parts. The first part on the surface of the processor is actually the part that is covered by a white metal, which will actually be showing all the descriptions about that particular processor. This is the top part of the processor. Then again, the second part is the outer part, or the part where you have the connections to the motherboard, which actually will have different pins connections, of which when you embed into the motherboard, these pins will be the ones making connections and communications to other parts of the computer. And therefore, when you speak of a processor, it is just a small device like this, which is used to make many calculations at 1 second, many calculations in a time, of which these calculations will be connected or communicated using these connections that you see at this particular point. On the top part of the processor, there is normally a liquid-like material that will actually be used whenever you want to cool the processor that is heated, and therefore this will help to regulate the amount of heat that is being generated whenever you're using your processor or your computer is working. And therefore this processor will always be put on top of this processor. There will always be a fan which will be regulating the amount of heat that is being generated by the processor when this processor is actually in operation. When the computer is working, the processor will always work in cooperation with the memory. Now, the memory will actually be a temporary storage of all the instructions or the information or the data that is being processed. And therefore, whenever the processor wants to fetch information or wants to work on a particular data so that you get out the information, that data will be stored into the RAM. And therefore, the RAM will be a temporary storage of data that is going to be worked on a processor. Take a scenario. Suppose you want to fetch information from a hard disk and you want that information to be worked on by the processor. The information will actually have to pass through the RAM, stored on different memory address in the RAM, and then that information on the RAM will be easily accessed by the processor because RAM and the processor are working in close proximity. And therefore, this RAM here is a temporary storage of information of which all the data that you store or you want to work on whenever the processor is on will be fetched from this particular RAM. And this RAM will actually help the processor to fetch that particular data quickly so that it works on that particular data and give the output in response quickly. This RAM is a temporary storage of data, and therefore it is a volatile memory in the sense that whenever power is lost, all the information that was stored on this RAM will actually be lost. So it is only active when the processor is on and when the computer is working. When the processor or the computer is not working, all the information stored on the RAM will be lost, and therefore RAM will have nothing to store in that particular. And therefore, that's why all the time whenever the processor is working, it will be in collaboration with RAM to be able to fetch information quickly from the RAM to the processor and let the processor work on that particular data to get the output, either stored on the output devices, produced on the output devices, or stored in the memory devices. The output from the processor will have two parts. It will either be going to the storage devices or be going to be displayed on the output. Now, one of the parts of the computer block diagram is the storage part, where all the information from the processor will be moving and be stored into those storage devices for permanent use. Suppose you're writing a report, you're watching a movie, you want to save your movie or report into the hard disk or the storage device so that you can be able to access such files later. Now, storage devices are commonly used to store data or information on permanent basis, and they are usually actually used for storing large information or large data at the same time. Now, these storage devices of a computer are classified into many categories. The first type of a storage device is what we call the hard disk. The hard disk is the part of a computer that is used for storing information or data on permanent basis, and they are used to store large amount of information at the same time. Now, in these hard disks are classified into two categories. We have internal hard disks of a computer, like this one. This is an internal hard disk of a computer, which is actually used for the laptops. So this is a small hard disk of a computer used for laptops, and which is actually used for storing information on permanent basis on a computer. And then you can have also an external hard disk. This is an external hard disk, which is actually used to store information or data externally to your computer. You can store your files, your folders into this external device and then be able to retrieve them at a later stage. Therefore, this is actually an external hard disk of which all the data and files or folders can be stored on an external device like this. Then again, we have what you call the optical disks or optical storage. Optical storage involves two types of storage, which actually are CD and DVDs. A CD is a compact disc, which is actually used for storing information or data, and the maximum capacity that can be stored on this CD is only 700 MB. It can go, some CD go up to 1000 MBs, but then the commonly used type of a CD is that of a 700 MB. And it is only used to store information on only one single side. This side, which is shiny in nature, is the side which actual information is stored here. And then this side, which has labels, has no any information. Instead, it gives the labels about that particular CD. Another optical device that we use is the DVD, or digital versatile disc, which is used to store information on a permanent basis and which can store a large amount of information compared to a CD. A DVD can store up to 4.7 GB when it is only used on a single side. And then those DVDs which use double layer for storing information can store up to 9.4 GBs at one time. But again, there is also one technology of a DVD that is used to store amount of data more than 10 GB, which are called Blu-ray discs. Blu-ray discs are used for storing information or data which amount up to 50 GB of information or data at one time. Other storage devices include movable devices like the flash or disk drive, flash drive, pen drive, or memory devices, which can also be used to save information or data from your computer into storage and be able to use them at a later stage. A USB drive or a pen drive, a memory stick or memory device are a part of what you call the storage devices that the computer uses whenever the processor gives output to be stored onto storage devices. Processor will actually be going to two parts. Either to be going to be given as an output, or to be given to the storage devices to be stored for later usage. Now let us discuss the fifth part of a computer, which is the output devices, of which we are going to discuss all the output devices that are connected to your computer system. Now the output devices are many and can be classified into many types. And in this category we are going to start looking to one by one. One of the output devices that is commonly used whenever you want to connect to your computer is the printer. A printer is a device that will give you the output from your computer whenever you want to have a hard copy of your input. It may be that you are writing a report, you are writing a letter. Now you want to get an output as a hard copy, and therefore the printer will be used. And this printer will be having two connections: the connection for data connector or power connection, data connection, and then you have a power connection which will give power to this printer to be able to function as it is required to function. Then another part of a computer Another output device is the monitor. The monitor is a display or screen of which all the information that you want to see from your computer will be displayed. And therefore, whenever you want to work on any file or on any information into your computer system, that information will actually be done using your display or your monitor. And this monitor will actually be used whenever you want to navigate from one point to another using your mouse and keyboard. You can also be able to navigate and be able to move from one point to another using the mouse and keyboard as your input device to your screen. And other output devices are the speakers. These speakers will actually be giving you out the voice or sound from your computer system. You want to listen to a music, you want to listen or to watch a movie, the voice from the music or the voice or sound from your movie will actually be displayed or be shown out or be given out through the speakers. So speakers are part of what you call the output devices. The monitor or display or screen is an output device Again, a printer is also an output device. Let us now see how we can be able to connect a printer to our computer system that we connected and see how this printer can be used in the process of printing documents. Now, a printer basically has two cables. The first cable that you see here is normally connected to a printer, and it is a USB cable that is called a data cable, of which all the information that we send from our computer system to a printer will be passing through this cable. And therefore, this cable, whenever you want this printer to work, this cable will be connected to a USB. Since it is a USB cable, it has to be connected to a USB port like this. So in this case, we have connected our USB cable. But then, to make sure that this computer is powered, power comes into this computer, in this printer, we have to connect a power cable and then be able to use this printer. And therefore, this is a power cable, of which we have the power part and this is the cable that is connected to this printer. Therefore, this power part is connected to an extension cable, and then this port here is connected on the back side of the printer where power is to be connected. When you connect such a printer like this, the next part is to switch on the button. Now, if I switch on the button here, it must be responding. Well, what I do first is to switch on the power to allow power to flow into this printer. In this case, therefore, the printer shows that it is working perfect. Let us now see how we can use this printer to print a document and be able to apply and be able to see the printout from a printer. This activity will allow us to be able to use the printer to get printouts from this printer. So we want to see how we can use this printer that is already connected to the system unit and the display, how we can use this printer to print a document and be able to get some copies from this printer. What we do therefore is, the first part we have to do is to select the file that we want to print and then command that printer to print. And therefore, where I go is, I go to in a document, say this document, Information and Computer Studies for Secondary Schools, Form 1 and Chapter 2, Computer Hardware. And now I want to print this document. This implies therefore that I have to go to File menu and then go all the way to Print button menu here. Then with this print here selected, I am able to select the type of the printer I want to use here, which is Packard HP, Hewlett Packard HP. I'm also able to set the number of copies I want to print out of this printout. So the more you add here, the number will be changing. Let's say you want to take 2 copies of this document. And then thereafter, I leave all the settings to be default. I don't make changes to these settings. And therefore, the next part is to click on the print button, then be able to get the output from the printer. So I click on the print button. In this case, therefore, you'll be able to see the print, hear the printing giving out sound, which implies therefore that the print is working. Now we are going to get 2 copies. This is the first copy of the printout, and we expect to have a second copy coming like this. And therefore now we have 2 copies of the same document from this printer. Speakers are output devices that are used to give out the sound from your computer system. Whenever you are playing a music, you are watching a movie, the sound that you want to be given out will always be given out from the speakers. Now, the speakers have different connections, of which one of the connections to this particular speaker is actually the power cable. So to make sure that this speaker is working or is connected to the power, what we do is we connect this power cable onto the power extension cable. And therefore, this implies therefore that the speaker is now connected, and it will also be displaying that it is connected. Again, since this speaker, this subwoofer comes with 2 satellites, or 2 speakers, small speakers. And these small speakers will also be connected to this subwoofer to make sure that all these work together to provide the desired sound from your computer system. And therefore, these 2 speakers will have their own connections, 2 connections, which will actually be connected at the output or at the output point here to make sure that output is taken out. Then, to take out sound from your computer system, your system unit, to your subwoofer, there is a cable here that connects. That will be used to connect the sound from your computer system unit to the subwoofer here in the satellites to be able to give out the sound. And therefore, we connect this to the speaker point, and then connect the other ends to the audio. Red connected to the red color, and white connected to the white color, and make sure that these things are working. And thereafter, since this is connected, if I turn backside this here, it will imply therefore that the power is coming inside, of which will allow me to adjust and be able to see the color, or see the output from your computer system. Let us now play an audio clip or a music file and be able to hear the voice or the sound that comes from your computer through the speakers. To play a music file, I go to the music folder, and then play the file Tanzania. So to play this, I double click on this file itself, and then this will be displayed. Therefore, to control this audio or the voice, I come to the controls, which will allow me to increase the voice, the audio, or the volume.